everybody. I'm Matt Valley, and welcome to another episode of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Very excited for today's guest, AJ Keirans, who's currently the Vice President of Client Development at actually a really cool and innovative audience and data company called DISQO, DISQO. And he's also the president-elect for the Insights Association of Greater New York. Now, AJ is familiar to many people in the market research industry, many of the listeners here today, because he's long been on the conference circuit in the industry, and he's always seems to have been involved in some of the associations and taking a broader leadership role beyond his current profession. So the cool thing about AJ is that before he got into the market research industry, he had a prior career as a radio DJ and a band manager, and has lots of cool stories about that. And I'm excited to share it with this broader audience here. So welcome to the podcast, AJ.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt. I think what you're doing is really unique and exciting, especially in the MRX space of podcasts, which can be a little hyper competitive. This is a really unique spin, and I was really excited to be included in your as part of it.
Awesome. Well, it's only as unique and exciting as the guests. So no pressure.
Yeah,
So,
right.
No, there's no pressure on me. It's all about you here. So
yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. I'm used to being on the other side of the microphone. So this is this is all. Yeah, we'll see.
That's all right. I mean, check out that sweet setup you've got. I'm super lo-fi, right? So I'm doing it that way. But look at you. You're a total pro here.
Yeah, I say a face made for radio, and it's perfect. So we're definitely we'll see how it goes.
All right, super cool. Well, let's start with the professional side here, AJ. So I love your story actually about how you got into market research. There's so many serendipitous stories about how people kind of fall into this space. I like yours, so why don't you share it with us?
So I went to Fairfield, Connecticut. Connecticut is has a big hub for market research, which always was interesting to me. But my background, I went to Fairfield U. I studied IT and marketing. So my first career out of college was a corporate trainer doing IT training, Visual Basic, C++, Java, that stuff. So in my heart of hearts, I'm really kind of a little nerdy background, and I was a corporate trainer. I was traveling around, but 21-year-old AJ, was a lot different than we'll just say 40 plus AJ, and working 80 plus hours a week right out of school. It wasn't a great fit. And my roommate worked at Survey Sampling International, and I would come home from these 15-hour days, and they would all be on the deck, having cocktails, listening to music. It just seemed like a much cooler place to work. And so I asked them to, take my resume and see what was available. They weren't hiring in sales, which is what I do now. They had opening in IT. And so first 8 to 10 years of my career, I started was, I did websites, back-end database and Unix. I did desktop support. And then eventually that evolved into me kind of leading the survey programming team for North America, which was really unique and unheard of at that time. So it evolved from there. The last year or two, I realized that, like salespeople do, they were bringing me on these client visits and client calls, and I could speak nerdy to the tech folks and speak programming language, speak to marketing and sales, and everybody kind of left happy. And I would notice that they were driving really nice cars, and occasionally they'd take me out to lunch, or leave a 6-pack on my desk. And so it kind of it got the wheels turning that maybe I was in the wrong space in the industry. And so long story longer, I was a company called Pure Profile from Australia reached out to me, and I thought it was one of those hellish LinkedIn messages that you connect with somebody and they write you a six-page book to connect, and they said they were coming to the US and looking for operationally focused salespeople. And so that kind of touched on both of my focuses and really where I try to, differentiate myself. And I've been on this side of the industry now for about 10 years. So it's a good 50-50 split.
Yeah, that's great. I love that there's so many people in this space in business development roles who have really started on the technical side, right? Learning the
Hmm.
craft and learning how it works. And then, once you are in front of clients, you have that credibility because you've done that job. So I think that's a great story. Now, let's hear about the other side.
Hmm.
So you've talked about survey sampling and kind of growing up there, but I know you were in radio for a while, so
Yeah.
let's hear it.
So one of the cool things at Fairfield was they had a pretty small radio station, and it was in the basement of one of our dorms. One of our friends had a sports show, and I just thought it was amazing. It wasn't very good, but it was awesome to me that they would give him his own show. And so I remember I asked him a lot of questions, and one day I went to the station and signed up to get my own show, and they just gave it to me. Right? They were looking for, I think it was like a Friday morning at like 10 a.m. slot. So college, Friday mornings post Thursday night out wasn't really the thing they were trying to. I think we both filled the void
Dangerous
for the
time.
other. Yes, and so it was a little foggy at times, but it was really a great experience. I did that for 10 years. I wasn't in university for 10 years, but I eventually evolved. The last few years, I had a 4-hour slot. I was, you know, I won best local radio personality a few times in the local papers, which was really cool. And we had a
That's
pretty reli-
cool.
pretty religious following. And I even like to say that's how I met my wife. She was a local, and I was promoting the show on some message boards, and we had a lot in common, and so that's kind of how we met. Yeah.
What was the name of your show, by the way?
It was called "Sharing in the Groove," which it comes from a lyric from a Fish song, from the song called "Weekapaw Groove." And I would play. I would usually start the show with a version of that song, since that's to this day still my favorite band.
Okay, cool. Jam band.
Yeah.
So I might have guessed by the shirt.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I know we talked before, and you shared with me how your experience in radio kind of led to other things and connected you to certain bands. So tell us how that sort of evolved and worked.
So right. Yeah. So you think as they give you more time that, oh, it's great, I can just play the music, but 4 hours became a lot to fill. And so the last few years I had an idea, since I became friends with different venues and bands, to expand, and we would give the bands an hour that they could either come in and co-host, or we'd do interviews, and a lot of them would do live performances. And so there was a band from New Jersey that I had connected with and liked what they were doing, called Scarecrow Collection. And I invited them in, and we really hit it off. And they had said, well, we have other people like you in the Connecticut area who are enjoying our music. Do you have any recommendations of where we should play? And so, I said, I'll reach out to Rich at the Acoustic Cafe, or Jim over here. And eventually I just realized I started making these connections with people.
Hmm.
And it was never planned. Most events aren't planned, but right. I was connecting them and putting them in touch. And finally I kind of said, I'd be willing to help you guys. And so, that evolved into, yeah, and that involved me being a band manager. Thank you to Survey Sampling, my early years. Their copy machines were used many times for band promo and flyers. And so it was kind of this duality. I would work my corporate, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and then drive to Boston or Philadelphia for our gig that night, and be back at my desk, the next morning. So yeah, it was really great. I had a lot of great experiences from that.
Cool, cool. So how did it all end, by the way, or has it?
Unfortunately, yeah, yeah, it was, unfortunately it ended because uh, musicians, they're more focused on the music, and getting, it was like the MySpace days. Facebook hadn't really taken off, and so I was doing myself and the guitar player, who's still one of my close friends this day. We're doing a lot of majority of the heavy lifting, and it became too much. I ended up with an
Right.
18 passenger van that I bought, and we it was just it was an amicable ending. Nick left the states to go to New Zealand and work for Peter Jackson, and so it
Oh,
was kind of
wow.
a cross. Yeah, it was kind of a crossroad of, can we really tell him not to leave when he knows that he and I will still be doing, 17 jobs within the organization. So it was so it was a nice ending. The band did get signed to a record deal, and you can listen to their album on Spotify, and they were in heavy rotation on satellite radio. So it was definitely, it helped me become a better salesperson and build better relationships. So it's really kind of the foundation of how I, business development and solicit.
All right, AJ. So you did that for a long time. Do you have a favorite story from those days, Scarecrow Collection or the radio days?
Favorite. So the most, obviously we booked them in, 25 states around the country, and almost, over 250 shows, which is awesome. But because of that, I made some cool connections, and was able to work an event at the Beacon Theater. The late Arthur Lee of Love, he was really sick at the time, and so a lot of these world-class musicians were coming together to do a benefit. And a woman that I knew that was an agent in New York City, Alicia Gallant, uh, invited me to come help her work this event. And so one of the cool experiences of that was getting to meet Robert Plant. So that was really,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
it was, we were at rehearsal in a rehearsal space in Manhattan, and, we're all standing there, and somebody, Robert, this is AJ. AJ, this is Robert. Like I really needed to like I didn't know who he was, and so he was just shook my hand. AJ, nice to meet you, and went and rehearsed, and then at the end of rehearsal, everyone's kind of whispering and trying to figure out what kind of limo or car service or something to get him, and I could just see him out of the corner of my eye, like, I don't really feel like waiting. That's not for me. So he just kind of, Irish goodbyes and walks out the door, and you could see through the window that he just hailed a cab in Manhattan, jumped into a yellow taxi, and drove off, and he was back the next day for his set, and hung out, and we got to all sit on stage and watch him just kill it. It was great. Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. Super cool. It's great to hear that Robert Plant is, even though a giant rock star, is still just a regular guy too.
Yeah, and the cool part was, it was the show was already booked and really ready to go, and he reached out and said, he flew himself over from England, paid for everything himself, and just really had a lot of respect and appreciation for the work of Arthur Lee and Love, which was really just, it was really cool.
Cool, cool. Now, undoubtedly, you've taken some lessons from that experience and applied it into your career in market research, particularly on the business development side. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when you're booking a band, obviously, the band is local, and people, in this case, the guys were from New Jersey. They were known at a few local spots and what have you. But as you're branching out, you're really trying to introduce somebody who has no idea, about this band. You do some legwork. You send them a kit, maybe we'd make sampler CDs, and really a lot of soliciting, trying to get their interest in what you're doing. And then from there, that if they're interested, you're not going to get the Friday, headliner spot. You're probably going to get a Tuesday or Wednesday. Maybe the club has an open mic, and they might feature you. Instead of getting the two songs everybody else gets, you might get three or four. And then you build trust. And so for me, that's always how I looked at it. I don't mind making cold calls. I don't expect that a new client is going to give me their 5,000 complete Gen Pop tracker. We're going to
Right.
try to low incidence top off to earn that, and really kind of earn their trust, and build that trajectory. So for me, that's always
Sure.
how I've approached it. People hang up on me, or have in the past. It doesn't seem to happen as much. And yeah, I would just call them back. Oh, sorry, we got disconnected. But for me, it's really just about building trust, and so that was the key for me because I would even book shows later on, and bands who never played, maybe from the Midwest, would come to Connecticut or New York and say, "Oh yeah, we can bring 100 or 200 people," and they would really want a bigger guarantee.
Mhm.
And they might dupe you the once, but if they're a lot 9 times out of 10, you aren't going to book them again. So
Right.
that's how I look at it. Yeah.
Right. Cool. So now you've actually spent a good chunk of time in the market research industry, and particularly, so much on the sample side. And it
Yeah.
feels like so much has changed over those years. So do you have any thoughts on what the future holds for market research or the panel side of the business, et cetera?
Mm, yeah. For us, at DISQO, one of our focuses obviously is on quality, but we also really uh, have a unique offering, which was one of the main reasons I joined the company, which was digital behavior. And so
Hmm.
uh, allowing, we have a large US panel that allows us to track all of their activity, online, from searches to media consumptions to actual purchases behind, walled gardens, whether
Hmm.
they're, things like if they're Prime members or what ads they saw before they actually, purchased that, which isn't a moon landing offering, but the way we do it is with a transparent and respectful way. There have been a lot of issues in that space in the past where people were being tracked without their knowledge, and so
Sure.
we're really almost overtly very redundant. This is what we're going to do. Here's how you can opt out of it. We'll be tracking this. This is how you'll be treated. So I
Hmm.
think still going back old school with really customer focus and white glove respect, but using new technologies to capture data, because a lot of us, especially now in the COVID era, time seems to be infinite. You're not really sure what day of the week it is, and what you did last week versus 3 months ago. So people aren't trying to be malicious. They just really kind of all blends together. So you're not sure if you purchased something on Amazon this week or 90 days ago. It kind of all blurs together. So it really allows us to really see with much success.
That's great. It's great to hear that you're taking a very transparent approach with the participants who are like gold in this industry, right?
Right.
So now they're providing so much more information beyond just their opinions. They're telling us, they're allowing us to see what they're doing, and you're doing it in a transparent way. Super cool stuff.
Yeah.
Great, great. Um, so so tell me about other podcasts or other media that you find interesting or useful right now.
So right now, I think in the MR space, there's a few that I really like. The Ride podcast, and I've been following that pretty religiously. Adam Jolly and Adam Dietrichs do that,
Mhm.
especially during, around the election. There's been a really heavy focus on polling and kind of in a nice way, like dumbing it down to make it understandable and see what's going on and trends, as well as a focus on technology, which I really like that. Um, Priscilla McKinney does Ponderings on the Perch, which is a really great one, as well as SEMA does Data Guru. So those are kind of my top three industry wide podcasts, and then a special kind of honorable mention to my friend Jamie in Brazil, who does the Happy
Mhm.
Market Research podcast. So those are kind of my quad four that I go back to, and then music wise, there's a media group called Osiris Media, and they really, it ranges from David Crosby, hosting stuff, to Fish or Grateful Dead, or using musicians to kind of tell their story. I think one of the a musician from the Disco Biscuits does like a fantasy football podcast. So really kind of all over the gamut. So I
Cool.
used to listen to more podcasts when I would travel more. So I think I've really had to
Sure.
make a point to do that. And then selflessly, I host my own podcast called the 16 Ounce Canvas.
Cool. Well, I'll produce some links to the ones that you mentioned. I'm glad that you called out some of the industry podcasts because there's a lot of good stuff out there right now. So, so very cool. All right. So I know you've seen one or two of these before. So you know what's coming here. I don't want to make any assumptions, but I see your shirt and I'm thinking about, what's coming. So Desert Island Disc, you're stranded on a desert island.
Yeah.
You have 3 records that'll carry you out for the rest of your days. Of your choice, what are they?
We've talked about this, Matt, and every time, the build up. This probably changes for me daily because I try to paint these pictures of what the island would be like, and then what am I doing, and what's going on. So the one that always I come back to, and Matt's mentioned it. I'm wearing my Grateful Dead shirt. Is I think American Beauty by the Grateful Dead. I think it's one of the greatest albums of all time. I mean, people will think of the Grateful Dead, but this is really kind of a, Americana, has some nice picking on there. And I really just think it's a personal album for us. When my son was born, he was a preemie and we kind of lived in the hospital for a while, and that album was on repeat. So when I hear the song Ripple, it gets me on multiple levels.
Cool.
The Raconteurs, and this is one that's probably changed a few times, but the Consolers of the Lonely album, I figured I needed something with a little edge to it. And I didn't think Rage Against the Machine really fit an island vibe, and so that's one. And then and this is my audible, I would say maybe the Beastie Boys with Paul's Boutique. I've really
very nice. Excellent.
I've come to appreciate that even more in the last few years. Just kind of stripping apart all the samples and watching they have a live kind of documentary that's out now that's really shows like how amazing that album really is over the test of time. So if you ask me tomorrow, I'd probably have 3 different albums, or 2 different. I think American Beauty will always be on there.
Very cool. I think that's actually the second time Paul's Boutique has come up. So very cool.
Yeah, that was my audible. Before we were talking, it wasn't. And I was like, man, that album is so good. Yeah.
All right, cool. Awesome. Well, this has been a great chat, AJ. I really appreciate your time, taking out from your own busy schedule. So it's been a great chat and I really appreciate it. So let's stay in touch. Let's talk soon. And of course, rock and roll, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Like I said, you're doing something really great and unique. And I think people are really going to dig it. So thanks for all you do. All right, cool. Thanks, AJ. See ya. Thanks.